Chapter 6. Lengthen your stride. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Sick business have been restored to health, great engineering feats performed, discoveries made, inventions perfected, grievous disease healed, and derelicts made men after sentence of defeat was passed by faithless and doubtful souls. Somebody took God at his word and had the courage to try again. Somebody had the faith to believe that the impossible was possible, the incurable curable, and that somehow, in some way, success was still attainable. Indeed, thousands, once desperately ill, owe their lives to the fact that someone would not let go, that someone would not give up. He must live, a dear one has said, and then backed up his statement with steadfast faith in an unfailing God. Businesses have been saved by prayer and the will to try just once more. Yes, with God all things are possible. The dauntless man lengthens his stride when things go wrong. The defeatist sits down and slumps. Thomas Edison did not sit down and give up when his first effort in finding an effective filament for the carbon incandescent lamp met with failure. He lengthened his stride. He sent men to China, Japan, South America, Asia, Jamaica, Ceylon, and Burma in search of fibers and grass to be tested in a laboratory. Luther Burbank, the plant wizard, did not quit when obstacle blocked his way. At one time, he personally conducted more than 6,000 experiments before he found the solution. George Westinghouse was called a lunatic when he advanced the theory that a train could be stopped by wind. The man is crazy, they said, yet he persevered and finally sold the air brake idea. Jesus implied repeatedly that we must go the limit and beyond the limit, that we must lengthen our stride, give the cloak with the coat, go the second mile and turn the other cheek. Suppose right now you say to yourself, I will keep on, then keep on, regardless of what your problem may be. Sickness, trouble, or need, stay your mind on principle and keep on until you make your demonstration. The answer will come. Reducing the power of adversity. The sickest people in the world are the people who believe that they are sick when they are not. They remind us of the elephant that Dr. W.L. Sadler tells us about that stood in one spot for many years, shackled with chains. He had never left his track except when he had been unfastened and led away by his keeper. One day it occurred to them to remove the fetters from his leg to see if he would leave his place. After the beast was free from his shackles, he steadfastly refused to move, even after he was allowed to become exceedingly hungry and food was placed within a few inches of his reach. He stood in his tracks, swaying from side to side, and trumpeting loudly, but did not take a step toward the food. The elephant was free, but he did not know it. He stood there in his old place just as securely bound by the charmed chains of his own mind, as if the steel bands were about him as of old. And so it is with humanity, says Dr. Sadler. Altogether, too many of us are like unto the elephant. We are absolutely free today, but not realizing or not believing the glorious fact, not having faith and courage enough to step out into the mental freedom and begin to enjoy our spiritual liberty. Like the elephant, we stand in a place of habit bondage and bitterly mourn our terrible fate. We are not surprised when an elephant behaves this way, but it ought to be a cause for great astonishment that intelligent men and women, sons and daughters of God, will allow themselves to be held down by fictitious bondage and bound down by a mere spirit of infirmity. How then can we break this captivity and reduce the power of adversity to a minimum? There are 3 things we can do. 1. Take the best possible view of everything that happens. Never make things worse or more serious than they really are. 2. Never meet adversity with adverse thoughts. The important thing in meeting adversity is not the adversity, but what we think of it and what we think of ourselves. 3. Realize that the power of adversity is subject only to our direction. The promise is that when we are centered in God, no harm shall come nigh our dwelling. 4. Talk to ourselves constantly concerning man's rightful heritage and our own expectancy of freedom and health and prosperity. 5. Accept the truth of God's presence. Believing too little, too much. Jesus said unto him, If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And straightway the father of the child cried out, and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. The man to whom Jesus addressed these words had suddenly come to the end of his rope. He was face to face with a problem that required more faith than he could generate. In plain words, he was desperate. Everything and everybody, including the disciples, had failed to cure his son. Crushed by many disappointments, his faith had dried up, leaving nothing but the vaguest hope. He was convinced, as evidenced by his approach to Jesus, that this son's case was hopeless. If you really think that something can be done for my son, if thou canst do anything. And Jesus stops him, saying, What do you mean, if thou canst do nothing? All things are possible if you have faith, if you believe in the right thing. The real difficulty that this man was facing was not the hopelessness of his son's condition, nor was it his lack of faith. It was too much faith in the wrong thing. He believed too little in the power and goodness of God, and believed too much in the negative appearance of evil. He believed too little in the right things, and believed too much in the wrong things. He had his faith in reverse. The only way he could right it was to throw himself back upon the grace and power of God with the words, "Lord, I believe. Help thou my unbelief." It is not uncommon to hear people express a desire for more faith, but what they really need is more faith in the right things. Most of us have all the faith that we shall ever need, but we center it in wrong things. We believe too little too much. We give too much power to appearance and too little power to God. Every time that we give power to distressing conditions by worrying or fearing, we are planting them deeper in our consciousness and strengthening their hold upon us. We are subverting and misdirecting the only power there is. Jesus said, "Have faith in God." Stop putting your faith in negative, petty, trivial things. Stretch your consciousness and enlarge your mind by putting your faith in great things, noble things, and true things. You will bring them into manifestation as you talk to yourself about them.